The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining me today. I appreciate your time as I teach you today how to do visual estimating and how to link it up to your point of sale system or even send it out to Excel. So today we're going to look at bringing in a PDF file, maybe that you've received of a floor plan, and we're going to use that as the basis of an estimate today. So we'll show you how you can take that and add intelligent information to it so you can send that on into your point of sale system. Following the formal part of the presentation where I'm showing you how to use the tool, I'm going to leave some time for some questions and answers. So if you have any questions or you're thinking, well, how did that work? Can you show me that again? Just type your question in the GoToMeeting console. It should be on the right-hand side of your screen, and I'll be able to look at those at the end of the presentation and answer any questions that you might have during the presentation. I understand that there's people all over the world joining us today. And I understand that some of you will be using the metric system. Today's webinar is going to be using Imperial, but the software also does work in metric for those of you that are in a different region that is using metric. So let's get started, and I'll show you how to bring in that PDF and use it for intelligent information. Here in Envisioneer, to bring in data, we come up to the File pull-down menu, and we go to Import. And there's lots of different ways that we can import files. I can bring in a PDF file. I can bring in a CAD file. So that's a DWG or a DXF file coming out of AutoCAD. I can also bring in an image file, so a bitmap or a JPEG. Any one of these three file formats, different types, will allow me to use it for the basis of an estimate. The PDF and the CAD file are obviously going to be the most accurate. Bringing in a traced image, there are tools available to help you to scale it and bring it into something that you can use, and I'll go over those. The interface of how to bring them in is all the same. So today we're going to use a PDF file. So I'm going to go out to my desktop and grab a PDF file of a floor plan. Now, when you bring in a PDF, there's something to know about PDFs. PDFs can be created in two different formats. One, you could put it on a flatbed scanner and just scan an image in. And when you do that, it creates that PDF by creating little pixels. So the more you zoom in, the more you can see the pixels. So if I zoom in here, you can see the more I zoom in, the worse it looks, and you get to see that kind of pixelation of how it actually created that file. Another way to create a PDF is in a CAD package, like AutoCAD or like Envisioneer that we're in today. Those PDFs are what we call a vector PDF. The more you zoom in, the better it looks. It's crisp, it's clean, you can snap to its edges. It's a very accurate PDF. Both can be brought in as the basis of your estimate. The one that is created as a vector PDF, the one that's originally created in a CAD file, it's just going to be more accurate. It's going to allow you to snap to it. But again, bring them both in, no worries. So the quality of the PDF that you're bringing in is going to be, again, crucial to how your estimate's going to end up. So on the left-hand side, we have tools to help you make it as accurate as possible. So one, right now you can see that this is going in more of a portrait layout, and I want to change this so it's 24 by 36 going in our landscape. So I'm going to change this angle to 270. If you've brought in an image file, remember I said you could bring in JPEGs and bitmaps, sometimes they'll be skewed. They'll be off on a very odd angle. Someone didn't put it right straight down on the flatbed. That's what this button's here for, is pick angle. So you can pick along that angle and straighten it up. If you don't know that angle, this is the tool you would use to nicely put it in at the nice 90 degrees angle for you. So no worries if something was off on an angle when they first created it. Next, most important, is scale. You want to make sure that what you're bringing in is to the correct scale. So I'm just going to use these zoom tools at the very bottom, and I can zoom in around this dimension that reads 10 feet. So I know from this extension line to this extension line, is 10 feet. So I can calibrate this drawing to make sure and double check that scale. So I'm going to pick the scale. I left click on the end of that line and I left click on the end of that line. It's a known distance of 10 feet. And I click OK. And that'll update the scale for me. I always double check my scale. Even if the designer, the architect, the builder wrote their scale down here in the title block, we're all human. We all make mistakes. I don't trust it ever. I always double check that scale and make sure that it's accurate because I don't want my estimate to be wrong and based on a scale that was put in there but was wrong. So I always double check that. You can also crop and bring in just what you need. So I build a little box around the area that I want to bring in on my screen and I leave everything else off. You can certainly bring everything in. I just see it as extra noise that I don't need. I just need that floor plan as the basis of my material list. Okay. I can also dim it down. The power of dimming it down, you can see how that gets that washed look, is when I'm tracing over top of it, it's going to start highlighting the things that I've estimated, and it's going to leave those that aren't estimated that same washed look. So it's a really good visual of what's been estimated and what hasn't been. So I always dim this down so what I have estimated and part of my material list is nice and vibrant on my screen. And then that's it. We've told it the scale, we've told it the angle, we've brought in the PDF, we've cropped around it, we've dimmed it. So we've made it as accurate as possible. Always make sure that what you're bringing in is as accurate as possible. Garbage in, garbage out, I always say. So make sure what you're bringing in is accurate, and that's why we give you those tools on the side. And then I hit insert. And a copy of that floor plan attaches to my cursor, and I just left click it here on this screen. This is like my drafting table. This is where I'm going to start taking measurements and understanding what's part of this project. To do that, I use these tools that we see docked up here. For anything that I'm building, walls, doors, windows, openings, structural floors, flooring materials, ceilings, roofs, all of that is docked up here. And those are all the different things that I can estimate. There's also things under interiors and landscape. We'll go over those later. So the first thing that I want to start estimating is those walls. So I pick on walls. Over on the right-hand side, it gives me a catalog of different choices of different types of walls that I've already built up that have all the materials attached to them. So I want to use siding. It's a 2x6 cement board siding wall. This wall has assembled all the various materials that I'm going to need to build that wall. So as I start my estimate, it's going to pull all of that data from that wall that I'm picking, and it's going to attach it to this PDF as I go over top of it. So I'm going to insert these walls by tracing around the endpoints. So I'm just going to zoom in here on my very first endpoint. See, as I put my cursor near the endpoint, a blue dot appears. That's because this is a vector PDF, and it can see those endpoints and snap directly to them. If you're bringing in something from that flatbed scanner, you just have to zoom in close to get it to that corner. Okay, so I just left click to say that this is where I'm starting. And then I go over to my next corner. And again, at my next corner, I see that corner, I pick it. So it's just going through and picking the corners where I wanted to indicate that this is where the wall starts and stops all the way around that floor plan until I get to this very last corner. Pick, here's a wall, here's the end of a wall, here's the very end of this wall. That traced around that floor plan, I right click and say I'm finished. I've indicated where my exterior walls are that are using 2x6 cement board siding. Now it wants to know, well, what did you trace around? When I was picking those points, was that the outside edge of my veneer, the outside edge of my siding? Or was it the outside edge of my stud or the inside face of my stud? So we can use any one of those to indicate this is what I was tracing around. So it depends on that drawing that you're getting in. If they have drawn just the stud walls and not indicated the exterior finish, you trace around the studs and you tell it that you traced around the studs. And then you just click OK. And from there, it highlights what we've already added into our estimate. So we can see those green walls have been part of our material list. So if already I go up to Tools, Analyze, Generate a Project Estimate, it will show me all of the various materials that have been estimated already that are part of that material list. So on my ground floor wall framing, I have blocking material, I've got stick nails, plate material, sheathing, studs, house wrap, sheathing tape, staples, cement board siding and their nails, insulation, vapor barrier, staples for that vapor barrier, drywall tape, compound, drywall screws, even paint, and baseboard. Because I drew the walls and there's baseboard going all the way around it, it gives me the linear feet of baseboard as well, and how many gallons of paint. It also gives me rough measurements as well. I shouldn't say rough, very accurate measurements. So for my interior wall surfaces, there's 1,062 square feet. So if I want to double check my drywall count or my paint, I can use that number to say, okay, that makes sense. I can see where they're getting that figure from. Okay, just going to hit exit. That wall that we chose from the catalog had all that material assigned to it. Every wall that you see in here has materials attached to them. So if I grab a 2x6 interior wall that's load bearing and left click to say where it starts and left click to say where it stops, it will have materials with it as well. Left click, left click, left click, and you show it where it starts and stops. 2x4 interior wall, you just tell it where it starts and stops, and it will put it in to your model. Now, with those walls, I'm just going to zoom in a little bit closer for us so we can see it. They're all a different color. That's a visual cue to you that this wall has different materials than this wall and this wall. Okay, so they're all different. You get that visual cue. And when I put in this wall, see, I'm a little bit off. I didn't pick very well because I was zoomed out. It's still going to give me the same estimate. I mean, it's still an 11-foot, 5.5-inch wall. But if I want it to be very accurate, I can click on any one of these dimensions and tell it exactly what it is. It's 12'2" away from the exterior wall. So you can be very accurate in the placement of all of these as well. Okay. Next on the list, doors. Catalog full of doors. All you have to do is select the door that you want and place it in. Now, for those of you that don't stock doors, you send that off to your door salesman. You don't want the SKU numbers for the doors, but you do need to put the door in. We need header material. We need jacks. We need cripples above. So we're still going to put in the door, and you can decide if you want it to be part of your material list or not. But at least it's there to cut that hole in the wall and give us the materials that we're going to need around it. Double French door here at the back. And again, when I'm placing these in, I can either just follow what I see visually, or if I need this to be very accurate, I can right click, enter insertion offset, distance away from a corner that I want this to be, and place that in to be exactly where I want it to go. All different styles of doors are in here, and you can always go in and add elements as well. So the catalog is customizable. The catalog can be your exact SKU numbers. So when I'm putting this door in, it knows that that is that particular door, or it can be a special order SKU because you don't have that, you don't order that door, you just want it to have a special order SKU when you're putting it into your point of sale system. Okay, those doors cut a hole in the wall and added themselves to the material list. So if I go back now, Tools, Analyze, Generate a Project Estimate, in my estimate, I will now see header material all the way through. Jack studs are added in. And if I scroll down, I'll have my doors in there, double French door, the panel door stops, dummy locks, all of these different materials, casing around those openings. As I add items in, it knows what they are and adds it to the list. Let's see where it's getting that information. I'm going to select this very front wall, and I'm going to look at its properties. In the property of the wall, it tells me that it's a framed wall. and it's framing using 2x6s. Those 2x6s are even intelligent enough to know the available lengths that you have in stock. So I have my pre-cut stud lengths, I have an 8-footer, more pre-cut stud lengths, 10-footers, 12-footers, and each one of these lengths has rules associated to it. So I know for a 16-foot board, I can use it for anything. That's my preferred length of board, use it for anything. But a 20-foot board, don't use it. Not to be used for any of these usages. That's a premium board. It's expensive. I don't want to use it unless, and you can also say you only use it for, maybe you want to use it for a rafter. If they're going to be hand bombing the roof and stick framing it, maybe you want those 20-foot boards only for that. These studs are set like that, only used for studs. So every board length knows where it's to be used and how to use it. And that's how it can create that material list in the back end of all of those members that it was using. It also has trim associated to it. So as I'm creating that wall, it's giving me baseboard at the bottom. And when I punch a hole in the wall for a door or a window, it's going to case around it with this MDF casing. All of the different trim pieces, we can either give linear footage or we can also go by piece. So if you know that these are in 12-foot lengths or 16-foot lengths, it can go by each as well. Depends on that SKU number and how you're going to take them off. And then here at the end under the quantity tab, this is where we assemble all of those different materials. So as I'm drawing that wall, just left clicking and highlighting it green, it's assembling that I need 7-inch reveal cement board siding and the nails for it and the house wrap and the sheathing tape. And you can see that these items are all by formulas. They're formula driven and they're customizable. You can customize any one of those formulas to change them. So if you wanted to add a bigger waste factor in, you can. Instead of 10%, make it 15, or pull back the waste factor. So all of those can be changed as you need them to. Every item, the doors, the walls, all of them have that quantity tab, and all of them will assemble materials for that. So not only am I getting this decorative door, I'm also getting that lock set and the deadbolt. What if I only want the lock set and the deadbolt? I don't supply the door. Then I could say replace the key element with just the assembled items. And it would take away the door and I just have those assembled items. Or if I uncheck that, I get the door and the assembled items. So if you don't supply windows and doors, no worries, you can take those out. That's the same for any of the assembled items you saw on the list for the walls. If you don't supply drywall, you just take it out of that list. Anything that's in there, we've added everything in to show you how much information you can. But if you don't supply something, you just take it out of that assembly list. And once it's out of the catalog, it never shows up again. Windows are the same as doors. You've got the full catalog of different sizes. You can add to that list, right-click, add in any SKU numbers that you need to. And then you just point and click to put them in. Or again, be very accurate and use the tools that are there. So as an example, if I wanted one centered in this wall, right-click, centered on the wall, or like we did for that French door at the back, set it a distance away from the corner. So I'll say center on the wall, and there it is. So now we can see all of those visual elements. We can see it here with the colors, but I can also pop it into a 3D view so I get a visual estimate. I can see everything that's part of that material list. There are the walls, the doors, the trim, and using this fly around tool, I can move myself around to fully understand everything that's part of that list and to make sure I haven't forgotten anything. I can even view this with just the framing. So if I wanted to double check how it's being framed, I can do that. So you can see there's blocking halfway up the wall. If you don't want blocking halfway up the wall, you can change the way it default frames. So here under building locations, this is where I tell it how to frame on the ground floor. And I told it 16 inches on center, double top plate, blocking halfway up. By clicking there, I can change it to anything. So if I just want it to be 16 inches on center, double top plate and bottom plate, or just a double top plate, single bottom plate, I can do that. And when I click OK, it changes. But what if I wanted a couple walls to have blocking? Back here on that PDF, that was a kitchen. I might need blocking there to nail and to secure those cabinets to the wall. Well, if I come here to view framing mode on off, it allows me to pick individual walls. And from those individual walls, I can say use a custom infill for those walls. Custom frame those walls and add blocking to that wall. So now they'll have the blocking. It also default frames according to a span table that you fill in how to frame the openings. What size is that header? How many Jack and King studs do you want on either side? And it uses that information and automatically frames them. But if you want one opening to be different, to not follow those rules, you can pick on that opening. So let's pretend that coming down on this front door, there's a point load. Perhaps there's something sitting on top of it that's quite heavy. I'm going to right click and look at its properties. Here I can say, don't refer to the span tables. Use a custom head, sill, and jam configuration. For the custom head, sill, and jam configuration, let's use a 9.5 PSL header. We need something a little beefier there to take that load. And I click OK, and it updates. If I go out of this framing mode and back into just framing, we can see that everything's been updated the way we want. So visually seeing all of this is very handy. It allows you to see what you're looking at and make sure you're not forgetting anything. If I put this into a 2D view, you can see that it's numbered every one of those walls. Every one of those walls can have an individual plan diagram done of them, a wall panel diagram. So as you're looking at the individual walls, it'll show you how it's going to frame that particular wall. Okay, so we'll look at this wall as an example. I'm going to insert that panel and hit close. That's this back wall here, number 5. And it'll give me a diagram of how to frame that wall. Everything that's labeled A is a stud. It's a 2x6. There's 12 of them, and you have to cut them down to this length. Then I have my jack studs and my header, my plate material, my cripple studs, all labeled. So this is a value add that you can provide to your builders as well. Not only are you giving them the material list and supplying that data, but you're also giving them individual framing diagrams as well. View, framing, display all but the framing, and we're back to that material list report view. You can also just punch a hole in the wall. So I can put in the actual door in the window, or I can just put a hole in the wall. So if I wanted a 5-foot opening in this wall as an example to get from the dining room to the kitchen, I can place that in. Or a 3-foot opening down here to get to the living room to the front entranceway. I can put that in. So it doesn't have to be a door or a window to get the casing and to get the headers. You can just put in an opening. And those openings can be an entire door, a doorway, or it can be just a hole in the wall that you're putting in, or a niche. So if you have an art niche that has that drywall on the back end of it, we can accommodate that as well, and we can put that in and add it to the material list, everything that it needs. Okay. We also do structural floors. So when we do the floor, do a couple of things. One, we tell it the joist direction. Are they running up and down on the screen or left to right? If it's left to right, it's 0 degrees. Joist spacing, they're every 16 inches. The sheathing material that we're using, the joist material, so this is 11 7/8 I joist. The sill plate, this is coming on our ground floor, maybe sitting on a foundation. Band joist, rim joist, and headers if there was an opening. And as you're clicking on each one of these different elements, it's going to highlight. Because I realize around the world, sometimes the terminology is a little bit different. So if you don't refer to it as a band or a rim joist, you can see what we're referring to as we highlight it. Okay, so that's all the elements that it's going to take off. And I'm going to tell it that I want it throughout the whole perimeter, where are those joists? And then I'm just going to turn on the structural floor framing so we can see the joists running through. So that's taking those I joists from one side all the way over to the other, because I told it to fill in the perimeter with the framing. But I can take that framing, and I'm just going to scroll through here, and I can tell it that I needed to break it at certain points. So if I wanted to start and stop at a different point, I can tell it the structural floor to insert a bearing line, that the joist will stop here at this wall from this point to this point, and they'll overlap there. Okay, so that was I just right-clicked, structural floor, insert a bearing line, told it to stop the floor joist here to here, and it automatically overlaps the floor joist for me. All of that becomes, again, part of that material list. Generate that project estimate. Here now we can see that we've added in the foundation that treated sill plate, because as part of that floor construction, I told it I wanted a 2x6 treated plate, and it gave me a mix of 16-footers and 12-foot boards. And again, I could tell it not to use a 12-foot board if I only want 16s, or if I want to mix, I keep it and tell it that both of them can be a plate. I've got my I-joist, my rim board, my subfloor, adhesive, anything that you want to associate to that floor. That could even be finished materials. So if you wanted it to be all hardwood or all tile, you can put that through. That can also be done with just our floor tool. So if you're in a slab on grade situation and you're not putting in a structural floor, you would just use our floor by room or perimeter tool, and that could automatically put down your slab and a finished material on top of it as well. Okay, the same with ceilings. If you're doing ceilings and you're going to be just counting drywall and it's a flat ceiling throughout, you can say ceiling by perimeter. But if you're doing ceiling and you're going to be doing ceiling joists, or if the ceiling changes in one room, maybe it's a tray in one and a cathedral in the other, you would do ceiling by room. And I'm going to do ceiling by room, and I'm just going to put it in this alternative view here. This view is called our 2D designer's view. It looks down and shows us the finished materials. So as I put in our ceiling here, I'll do a framed 2x6 frame ceiling just so you can see all the materials, and say it's a 1/2-inch drywall ceiling. Left click in a room, and you can see the ceiling being put in to each one of those rooms. And if I pick on a ceiling and right click on it and look at its properties, this is where I can customize it and say, this is a tray ceiling, this is a cathedral, telling it the exact angles, everything that it needs to get the quantity of drywall and the framing that it needs to frame around that. So when I click OK, that becomes a tray ceiling. And you can see that in 3D as well. And if I look at this in framing, display framing, we can see how it's framing that out. I'll just put that as an outline so you can see that a little better. Okay, so it puts our ceiling joists in, our floor joists in, our walls are all framed, and it's all being counted as well. So that's the power of visual estimating. Not only am I counting this and seeing the highlights on the screen that I have put in my ceiling, I know this is a different wall than this wall, but I can also pop it into 3D and make sure visually I'm not forgetting anything. Okay, I'll put on a roof. Catalog panel over to the right shows all the different roof styles. So that's the one key part of this software as well, is that we've tried to make all of the tools the same. You pick the icon, I want walls. You go over to the catalog, you pick the wall you want, you left click in to insert it. Same with doors, same with windows, floors, ceilings, and same with roof. Now I see the different types of roof. I'm going to choose an 8/12 hip with shingles. Left click to place it on top. It automatically puts on an 8/12 hip with shingles. Each surface of this roof has an arrow pointing to it. So you can see all the individual sides there. If I pick on an arrow, it turns it green. Green means I've selected that side and I want to change it. I'm going to make it a different pitch, plate height, style. So if I look at the properties of just these two sides that are green, everything that's red is going to retain the 8/12 hip. But these sides, maybe I want them to be a 4/12. Or maybe I want them to have an extended overhang of 2 feet. Or maybe instead of being a hip, these two sides are gables. And when I click OK, it'll change all of that. They become gables with that extended 2-foot overhang. And that all becomes part of the material list. I'll get bundles of shingles, sheathing. I'll get framing nails. And this one is a rafter roof, so I'll get all my rafters as well. So everything can be customized. You pick on the side of the roof you want to change. We want to incorporate this little overhang here at the front. I say break the roof that went around the house right here where we're going to change it, and right here where it comes out to the overhang as well. See how it added 3 arrows? Then I can take that middle arrow and stretch it out to bear on those columns. Okay, so now we can extend that roof. Very customizable, very powerful roof tools. And again, tools, analyze, generate a project estimate, all of it is going to be part of our material list. So we've got everything from the foundation, the ground floor framing, the ground floor wall framing, and if I scroll through the list, ground floor ceiling framing, roof finishes. So all of that gets incorporated because the selection I make from the catalog is intelligent. It has materials assembled to it. And as I place it in, it forms that geometry and automatically can count it because you brought in that scaled, accurate PDF that it can use to base your estimate on. Okay, so that all becomes part of that material list. It can also do foundations and multiple stories. If I come here, I can use this floor and foundation builder. What this tool is going to do is use the footprint that I've already created for my ground floor. And from it, I can create an additional floor level above or a foundation below. So we'll use it for foundation. You can have 999 stories. So no worries if you do multi-family construction, a multi-story, it can handle multi-stories for you. Okay, I click next. Again, for those of you in different regions around the world, you might use monolithic slab, slab on grade, full basement, just a stem wall and footing. Whatever the style, you pick it, and then you specify the materials you're going to use. And when you're specifying these materials, remember that when I pick a 10-inch concrete block walls or 10-inch poured concrete, it's going to use that to create my material list. My floors, I'm going to use a 6-inch slab or a 4-inch slab. And when I pick the slab, it's going to give me volume of concrete. But it could also have assembled with it wire mesh, heated floor mats, anything that you need when you're pouring that concrete, you can add it into that material list. Same with the footings. As I'm selecting this 1x2 footer, maybe I need rebar and chairs, seats for those rebars. Put it in. Forms, if you want to put those forms in and add in form boards, if you supply those as well, you can. Okay, you may not need that, but you can add it. I click next. It shows me a visual of what I am adding. And if I go into this hidden line view, I can also see the wall below, above it. For those of you that need that utmost accuracy, we can also move any of these elements. So right now that siding is sitting right flush with the concrete wall. I could say move the wall in just 1/4 of an inch towards the inside or outside, and it will move that wall so that that siding overlaps it if you needed to as well. And same with the footing. The footing is automatically centered underneath that stem wall. But if you're in a remodel situation and you have to do some underpinning and that footing has to move one way or the other, you can also move the footing as well. Okay, and then I hit next and finish. And if I change down here, right now we're looking at the ground floor to say I want to look at the foundation, we can see the foundation walls. And that's where I can say, well, I need to add in some beams to support the floor joists above. I'll go to my advanced member tool and I will say 8 feet off of the concrete slab in the foundation. Give me let's build up a member here. Let's engineer some members here. I'll say engineered floor, beams and headers. Let's use a 1 3/4 by 14 LVL you could put in, or if you're using steel, you can also put in steel. We could put in different beams, steel framing, steel members here. We've got W-shape I-beams, whatever you need. And I'm going to say that that's 3-ply. Okay, and it's a girder beam in my wall framing, and I insert it from here, left click, down to here. Repeat from here to here, right click, finish. So that will support those floor joists above, and it'll also give me a count of that beam. We can also put in a column. Come over here, I'll put in a steel column. I'll put in a lally column about mid-span here and mid-span here to support that beam going across. And then if I pop this into a 3D view and go underneath, let's go underground, we can see our foundation and our house. Settings, building locations. I'm going to increase that wall to say this is an 8-foot tall wall, and that'll bring that all the way up for us. All of those walls that we're putting in here that we have for our concrete, if I select all of them, look at their properties, I can say let's make those all an 8-foot tall wall and bring those all through. So we can make any changes that you need to, and that becomes part of the material list. Once it's part of that material list, then it's time to hook up that information. Here under Generate Project Estimate, it assembles all that material and I can look at it. I can't edit any of it, it's just a visual. From here, I could print it out if I wanted to, or I can also save it. I could save it in an Excel format or text format or CSV format, and then open that up in Excel. But if I want to hook this into my point of sale system, I'm going to say generate a quote. From everything that I've assembled, bring this in and allow me to transfer the information over to my point of sale system. You can see the highlight red over here. I don't have any prices in here. So it's going to highlight and say red flag, there's no prices. I haven't hooked any prices in. I'm not actually hooked up to a point of sale. But if I was, I would come up here to File, Export to a point of sale. And I'll give it a name, the file a name. And then it says, here is your export options. So you can send this all over and export this out to the records that you need to. And I'm going to say, let's put in all of I can say display only the grand total, and it can do that. I can say maintain the quote order, and it maintains it by the groupings that we did. And I can filter out any materials that I don't want to bring over or any phases of construction, and then I just export it out. And it puts that into a format that I can send to my point of sale. Each one of these can be edited. So if I need to change anything or replace something, so if I came along and said, oh, we're using this sill gasket, we no longer stock that, we're out of stock, I can right click and say substitute that product and find another SKU number that's part of your SKU numbers that you can swap it with. To be able to link this to your point of sale system, you have to customize the catalog to make sure that it's using the same SKU numbers in here that you're using in your point of sale. That's a service we can do for you. We can build the entire catalog and make sure that all of your SKU numbers are in here so it can match up perfectly. And as far as what point of sale systems that we currently hook into, there's a number of them, and I will show you the list that we have here. I'm just going to delete out all of these products and come up here to Tools and Options. So under Options here, I'm going to go to Export. When I export, I was currently telling it I'm going to BizTrack, but I can go to ABC, ActiveEnt, Advantage, Curtis, Eagle, Dimensions, Falcon, Enterprise, Lumber One, Peachtree, Ponderosa, Profit Master, all the various ones, UDA, Yardmaster, lots of them. Some of them are older. Some of them you might look back and say, I haven't seen that name in quite a long time. There's lots of different point of sales. So yours is in here. We simply hook it up. We send that file out to a local file, could be on your network, could be on your individual desktops, or we could also run and put this out on a server. To do that, we just need the server set up. So your IT person would come in and put in their username, the server address, and it would automatically hook that in and send it right off to your point of sale system. Oh, I covered a lot of information. So let me recap. When you're creating a visual estimate, you start that off either from the basis of a PDF or a CAD file or an image file, or you can even just start drawing in here. There's nothing stopping me from just drawing walls, watching the dimensions, typing in exact dimensions, and drawing a floor plan in here as well to create that model. Okay, so you can start it in a number of different ways, the estimate. But remember, garbage in, garbage out. We give you a lot of different tools to make sure that that PDF is accurate. Make sure you have the right scale. If it can be a scanned PDF, you're going to have to zoom in. If it's a CAD-based PDF from the beginning, then it's more accurate and you can pick more accurate corners. Use the tools at the top of the screen. Make your way across the screen here to estimate walls, doors, windows, openings, floors, ceilings, roofs, just general surfaces, stairs, railings, columns, beams, footings, and corners. So even corner details, we didn't get into that, but corner board and shutters can all be added. Inside, cabinetry, appliances, furniture, electronics, electrical. So we can do an electrical diagram, a lighting diagram, plumbing, HVAC, equipment. We can even slope the lot and put in decks. So for those of you that are doing decks and need to estimate those, let me profile that for you quickly before we get into questions. I choose decks. I tell it I want a low-level cedar deck, 2x6. I say it's going to start here, come up here, come through here, and then just a small little deck here. And I'll line it up with my very first start point. Finish. There's my deck. If I look at it out in 3D, I can see it. I can double click on it and say, hey, let's add a railing to that deck, and we'll make it a pressure treated deck around it, railing. And then I can come back and say, I need deck stairs, and I want them right here. It'll cut that railing and automatically put in a handrail. It also understands terrain. So if this site slopes, so if this site goes down, let's say -5 feet at the back of the house, from here to here, it automatically slopes down that terrain, puts piers underneath that deck, and extends down the stairs. All of that still goes into that material list. So now what I'd like to do is answer any questions that you might have about how you do a material takeoff in your office, how it can hook up into your PDF, what's the best case for PDFs, how do you maybe make those assemblies, what's the process. Type in your questions in that GoToMeeting chat panel, and I'll be able to answer those for you live during our broadcast right now. So let's first see what questions we have. You mentioned the catalog build. How do we start the catalog build, and how would I create it myself? Okay, good question. So that is the big point of this. If you want this to hook into your PDF, when I click on this wall and look at this quantity material, this house wrap as an example, your house wrap in your SKU list is going to have obviously a certain SKU number. So when we look at this, each element has a part number, your SKU number. Ours is just a generic called wrap right now. Yours might be 025678. And it has a very distinctive unit of measurement. These two, part number, unit of measurement, that's what your point of sale system knows. So when it accepts information in, you have to make sure that that part number and that unit of measurement match. So your point of sale system will allow you to do a dump of inventory. It'll create a CSV file, of everything that you stock. We can take that list and plug it into Envisioneer so that your SKU numbers are here. And that's a service we can do for you. Or you can come along and change all of these SKU numbers to be what you want them to be, to match and marry with your point of sale system. So each one of these can be changed. I would just click on this button, point it to the secondary item that you want it to be. If you don't carry sheathing, if you don't carry OSB, you can remove them from the list. Anything you don't want doesn't have to be there. These formulas right here. So for house wrap, it's taking the exterior wall area plus the opening area. So when I punch a hole in the wall, it sees that as less in my exterior wall area. So I add it back in. And then I divide it by the area of a roll. If I click on this button, I can even take that, and I'm going to add brackets around the entire thing. And then over here, my operators say, times that by 1.1, 10%. I want a 10% waste factor on that house wrap because I know they're going to use them up on site. So give me 10% and then click OK. And that changes that one formula. And you can change every formula. So you do have the power to go through here and change all of the formulas, add in new product, edit out products that you don't want, and marry it with your current point of sale system SKUs. We also, as I said, do that as a service for you. You just have to give us the dump from your point of sale so we can build that for you. Okay. Next question. What if I don't see my point of sale system in your list? If you didn't see your point of sale system in the list, if you're using like a homegrown system, we just have to understand what it is. So if you could, if you don't see it in the list, it might be there, and I might have scrolled quickly. Most of them are in there, but if it is a homegrown one, when we come here to Tools, Analyze, Generate a Project Estimate, we can create and edit templates so it sends it out in a format that can be read. So we can dump that out in a format that you could read. So anything like that can be achieved as long as there's something that we have like formulas for. Okay. Next question. Was this recorded? Can I show it to other people in my office? Yes, I did record this session. We will be putting it up on YouTube. So if you wanted to watch it again to understand the process, or if you need to show other people, you can watch the YouTube recording. Otherwise, if you have a team and they have specific questions and you want to use it for something maybe outside of the box, or we didn't cover something in today's class that you have questions about, we can do a customized webinar for you. You assemble the team, contact our sales office, and they will set up a customized webinar for just you and your team. Just you and your team are in. You can speak out and ask any questions that you want. So yes. Okay, that seems to be all the questions that I have. So I'm going to leave this open for 1 more minute, just in case someone thinks of a question. And if there are no questions, I'm going to end off the webinar. And then again, thank you everyone for joining me today and spending an hour learning about visual estimates and how they are performed. And if you do have any specific questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us at sales@cadsoft.com, and we can answer your questions for you and either type back a question for you if it's a quick and easy answer, or do another webinar for you. Okay, doesn't look like there's any other questions. So thank you again, everyone, for joining me today. I hope you learned about visual estimating, and I hope to see you in another webcast. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.